The air in the cable news studio was thick with a controlled tension, the kind that only exists in the moments before a live broadcast. It was the sterile, chilly environment of modern political theater. All bright lights, dark polished surfaces, and the faint hum of unseen electronics. On one side of the anchor's desk sat Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a dynamo of energy. Her notes a precise stack of data-filled papers. She was a fighter, known for her rapid-fire delivery and her mastery of policy detail, a progressive champion ready to litigate the finer points of any legislation. On the other side sat Senator John Neely Kennedy of Louisiana. He seemed, by contrast, almost placid, while Crockett exuded the restless energy of a prosecuting attorney. Kennedy had the calm, patient demeanor of a small-town doctor about to make a house call. His hands rested on the desk, his gaze steady, his posture relaxed. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to listen. Or so it seemed. The topic was a sweeping new social spending bill, a multi-trillion-dollar proposal designed to address everything from childcare to climate change. The anchor, a seasoned professional named Amelia Vance, lobbed the first question to Representative Crockett, and she was off to the races. Amelia, this isn't just a bill, it's a paradigm shift, Crockett began, her voice ringing with conviction. We're looking at a CBO score that projects a 1.2% GDP growth over the next decade, factoring in the long-term benefits of early childhood education and green energy investments. The framework allocates specific tranches of funding, $400 billion for universal pre-K, another $350 billion in tax credits for clean energy manufacturing. And it's all offset by a 3.8% surtax on non-labor income for households earning over $500,000. The data is clear. This is a fiscally responsible investment in the American people. She continued, a torrent of statistics, program names, and bureaucratic acronyms flowing effortlessly. It was an impressive display of intellectual firepower, designed to overwhelm any opposition with the sheer weight of its detail. Throughout it all, Senator Kennedy just watched, his expression unchanging, a faint, almost imperceptible nod, his only reaction. Amelia turned to him. Senator Kennedy, Representative Crockett lays out a detailed case. The Congressional Budget Office has scored the bill. Where do you find fault with the numbers? Kennedy leaned forward slightly. He didn't look at his notes. He didn't look at the anchor. He looked directly into the camera, as if speaking to someone sitting in their living room hundreds of miles away. Well, Amelia, he began, his Louisiana drawl slowing the frantic pace of the conversation down to a crawl. I hear the Congresswoman. I do. And I've read all 2,000 pages of that bill. It's got a lot of words in it. A faint smile touched his lips. He reached down beside his chair, not for a binder full of counter statistics, but for a small, worn, leather-bound book. It looked like an old-fashioned checkbook ledger, the kind a small business owner might have used 50 years ago. He placed it on the polished desk with a soft, solid sound. Then he produced a simple ballpoint pen, clicking it once. The click was the loudest sound in the suddenly silent studio. You know, he said, turning his attention to a visibly confused Representative Crockett. I'm a simple man, and the folks I represent in Louisiana, they're not complicated people. They're plumbers and welders and school teachers. And all this talk of CBO scores and tranches, it's a little highfalutin for most of us. He opened the ledger to a clean page. So, if you don't mind, Mom, I'd appreciate it if you could just help me understand. Let's forget the bill for a second. Let's just talk about a plumber in Monroe. He makes a decent living, but he's not rich. He's got a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage. Walk me through it. Using this, he tapped the empty ledger with his pen. How much more is that plumber going to pay in taxes for this? Not in percentages, in dollars and cents. And what, exactly, is he going to get for it that he can see and touch? Just help me do the math, right here. He held the pen expectantly over the blank page. The camera zoomed in, framing the shot perfectly. The high-tech studio, the fiery congresswoman momentarily silenced, and the old-fashioned empty ledger waiting for an answer. Crockett stammered, "Well, it's more complex than that, Senator. You can't just—" "I know it's complex," Kennedy interrupted gently. "That's my point. If we can't explain it to that plumber in simple terms, on a single page of a ledger, maybe we shouldn't be doing it at all." The silence that followed was absolute. In that single, simple, and devastatingly visual moment, the entire debate had been reframed. It was no longer about data points and projections. It was about a worn leather book and a pen, and a question that millions of Americans could understand. The people's ledger had been opened. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Before the show's credits even rolled, the fire had been lit. A producer in the control room, seeing the magic unfold, had already clipped the 45-second exchange. By the time Senator Kennedy was shaking hands and leaving the studio, his phone was buzzing with a ferocity he hadn't felt in years. The clip was already on Twitter, posted by the network with the headline, "Sen. Kennedy pulls out ledger, asks Rep. Crockett to do the math for a plumber in Monroe." Within an hour, it had 1 million views. By morning, it was 10 million. The internet had done what it does best. It had taken a single moment and amplified it into a cultural phenomenon. The People's Ledger was the #1 trending topic in the United States. The reactions were a perfect storm of modern digital discourse. On TikTok, a new trend was born. Young creators filmed themselves looking confused, with text on screen reading, "My professor explaining quantum physics." The video would then cut to the clip of Senator Kennedy, calm and direct, with new text, "My grandpa explaining how to change a tire." The videos were set to a folksy country music tune and garnered millions of likes. Memes flooded Instagram and Facebook. There was Kennedy, holding the ledger with the caption, "Your budget says you can afford a venti latte, but my ledger says you have bread and water at home." Another showed a split screen. On top, a complex diagram of the bill's funding streams. On the bottom, Kennedy's simple ledger with the words, "It ain't adding up, Chief." On Twitter, the intellectual battle raged. Conservative commentators heralded Kennedy as a genius of political communication. "This is how you do it," one prominent pundit wrote. Kennedy didn't debate the data. He debated the entire premise of swamp speak. He spoke for every American tired of being told things are too complicated for them to understand. The People's Ledger. Supporters of Representative Crockett fought back with equal passion. "This is a patronizing, sexist stunt," tweeted a progressive activist. Jasmine Crockett came armed with facts and data, and John Kennedy responded with a prop and a folksy caricature. "Policy is complex. It's supposed to be. Don't fall for the theater. Data matters." The cable news networks, having created the spark, now fanned the flames. On one channel, a panel praised Kennedy's masterful populist touch. The host declared he exposed the Achilles heel of the modern Democratic Party. They can't explain what they want to do in a way the average person understands. On a rival network, the tone was starkly different. Let's be clear about what happened, the host said, her voice laced with outrage. A highly qualified woman, a policy expert, was attempting to have a serious discussion, and she was condescended to with a prop. It was a theatrical dismissal of substance, and it's a sad commentary on our political discourse. Representative Crockett, for her part, did not stay silent. She appeared on another network that evening, defiant and unbowed. Look, she said, I'm not going to apologize for knowing the details of a bill that will affect millions of lives. And I'm not going to be intimidated by folksy props. This isn't a game. Governing is serious work. And if Senator Kennedy wants to treat it like a high school debate club, that's his prerogative. My focus is on delivering for the American people, not on winning a 30-second soundbite. Her supporters cheered her resilience. Her detractors said she was missing the point. But it didn't matter. The narrative was already set. The story was no longer about the spending bill. The story was about the ledger. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A few days later, the storm was still raging, but a quiet had settled over Senator Kennedy's Washington office. The phones were still ringing off the hook, and his press secretary was fielding interview requests from every major network and newspaper in the country. Kennedy, however, was in his inner office, looking out the window at the distant dome of the Capitol. His young legislative director, a sharp, ambitious man named Ben, walked in, holding a tablet. Senator, you're not going to believe this. We've got merch companies, not ours, mind you, selling People's Ledger t-shirts and mugs. They're selling out. The clip just hit 50 million views across all platforms. You didn't just win the debate, you created a brand. Kennedy turned from the window, a thoughtful expression on his face. He didn't seem triumphant. If anything, he looked weary. That's not what this was about, Ben. I know, sir, but the impact is undeniable, Ben pressed. You changed the entire conversation. Did I? Kennedy asked, walking over to his desk. He picked up the leather ledger, which was sitting in the center of his blotter. He ran his thumb over the worn cover. My grandfather gave this to me when I started my first law practice. He was a cotton farmer. He never made much money, but he knew where every single penny went. He used to say, John, never trust a man who can't do his own books. He looked at Ben. This wasn't about embarrassing the congresswoman. She's a smart lady. She believes in what she's doing. This was about a principle, the principle that government belongs to the people. And if the people we work for can't understand what we are doing with their money, then we have failed. Utterly. He put the ledger down. The moment that plumber in Monroe, or that single mom in Baton Rouge, or that retired fisherman in Grand Isle feels like their own government is a foreign country speaking a language they can't comprehend, we've lost the thread. We've lost what makes this whole experiment in self-government work. The People's Ledger movement did more than just go viral. It sparked a genuine nationwide conversation far beyond the Beltway. It was a conversation about communication, class, and the growing chasm between Washington, D.C. and the rest of the country. It forced people to ask whether policy asterisk had asterisk to be so complex, or whether that complexity was a tool used by the political class to shield themselves from accountability. It wasn't a simple victory of right versus left. It was a moment that revealed a deeper hunger in the American public. A hunger for clarity. A desire for their leaders to speak to them plainly, honestly, and with respect for their intelligence. John Neely Kennedy, with his simple prop and his even simpler question, hadn't just won a news cycle. He had reminded a nation that the most powerful truths, are often the ones that can fit on a single page of an old leather book. What do you think? Is simplicity in politics a sign of respect for the voter or a way to dodge the complicated truth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that break down the moments that define our world.